Well,
I guess they're doing okay.
I guess they're waiting to see. We'll find out. I'm Senator Roth, Representative Jim Steineke, and we just wanted to just meet with you all today and talk with you a little bit about some reforms that we are rolling out here today. This all started for me about the beginning of January as a new senator, meeting with a lot of agency folks just for the confirmation process and otherwise, just talking about our government, how it functions, how it operates, and through those conversations, some of them turned to the civil service, some of them turned to the difficulties we have in the hiring process and retention process, and from that theme started to develop, and in the months that followed, Representative Steineke and I had worked together and have been working on some of the reforms that we will talk about here today. I think it's important to remember that while we are updating some of the statutes relating to civil service, in no way, shape, or form are we altering the core of what civil service is. It is a very important reform that was brought about in 1905. We just want to make sure that in 2015, our state is still able to retain and attract the best workers so that we can live up to Governor Bob LaFollette's motto of the best shall serve. Anything you care to add on that?
Yeah, I just, first of all, I want to thank Senator Roth for all his work leading up to this. I also want to thank the governor for making the agencies available so that we could talk through a lot of these issues. I mean, these issues are things that the fixes that we're proposing, a lot of the problems that we're looking to fix came directly from our conversations with state agencies. It's also important to note that we have right now a great workforce of state employees. All we want to do is make sure that we're able to continue that progress into the future, where we're going to be able to recruit and retain great employees going forward with all the retirements that we're going to have coming up in the future.
I think it's important to note, we have at our state in 5 years' time, 23% of our state employees will be eligible for retirement. 10 years' time, 40% of our state employees will be eligible for retirement. And so often, government just works in a reactionary way. We wait for things to happen, problems to arise, then we react. This is one of the instances where we're trying to be proactive, understanding that there will be turnover in our state employees over the next 10 or 15 years. We want to make sure we can get some of these reforms in place. So I'll just start by going through a few of those. We want to streamline the hiring process here in state government. Talking to agency folks time and time again, it takes too long to hire people, which is why we have in this bill a 60-day goal to hire a new employee. Some agencies, and it varies a little bit by agencies, some of them 116 days on average to hire an employee. Others, that's over 200. To fill certain IT positions takes 8 months, and that's far too long, because you've got good quality employees who they're not just applying for the state, they're applying many different places. And we want to make sure, again, agency folks, they go to offer them that job 2 or 3 months later, and they say, I'm sorry, I've already taken another job. We want to fix that, which is why we're putting in that 60-day goal, 30 days for the Department of Personnel Management to go out there and post the job and collect resumes, and then 30 days for the agency to take those resumes, conduct interviews, and make the final hire. The second reform we have a state civil service exam that gets issued, and it's an archaic process. Nobody does this anymore. So as we try to realign our hiring practices to the best practices we see in private business, in 2015, this is a thing of the past. We've got instances in state government where the way it currently works is you take the civil service exam, and they score this exam and send up the highest rated applicants to go on to the interview process. One particular agency was looking to hire an accountant. Out of the pool that they received, they found out during the interview that their number 1 applicant was a short order cook who had absolutely zero accounting experience. So we want to take this back to a resume based, where you will hand in a resume just like you do anywhere else in private business. That, I believe, will significantly shorten up that time frame and help us reach that goal of 60 days to hire an employee.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've been focused on over the course of the last 4.5 years or more is really trying to streamline and make government more efficient. One of the things that we focus on in this bill is streamlining the human resource functions to provide some consistency and fairness throughout all agencies. So one of the things there's different probationary periods for different employees. Most employees are under a 6-month probationary period currently. Administrative professionals can have up to a 2-year probationary period. One of the things that in talking with agencies that they found frustrating is during that initial 6-month period, if they're getting towards that 6-month deadline and they're not exactly sure how this employee is going to work out, they may be okay, but they may not be fulfilling all the role as expected, but they think there's room to grow. They have to make a decision at that 6-month time frame whether they're going to retain that employee or not, because in that 6-month time frame they're at will. So a lot of cases they're just they're getting rid of those employees before that 6 months is up, so they don't have to deal with everything else after that. So one of the things that we do under this bill is standardize the probationary period to 2 years for everybody, which gives the employee more time to grow into their position, their employer more time to work with that employee, and also we give the agencies the freedom to waive that probationary period after a year if everything's going great with the employee. And then when it comes to layoffs, we want to make sure we, again, recruit and retain the best employees. Part of the reforms are making sure layoffs are based not only on seniority, but also on performance and disciplinary records as well.
One of the other reforms that we have is we call for a unified performance evaluation across all state agencies. Mm-hmm. We don't have that right now. So at some places it's nothing more than a thumbs up, thumbs down. Other places it might be a 5-step performance evaluation process. We're going to have a uniform evaluation. I think that's very important. DPM will administer this, but it's very critical because not only do we want to attract the best employees, we want to retain the best employees, which is why in our bill we are bringing back a merit-based program, lump sum bonus program for state employees who score high on these evaluations. We're going to leave it up to DPM to determine what that form will be. We're going to leave it up to them to determine how to administer that program so it's uniform and consistent across state agencies, but we look to fund that with about $6 million. We want our state employees to know that they have valued service. We want them to work hard, and we want to make sure that they are rewarded for the hard work that they do. Another reform we have is, you are probably aware, the pinnacle of the civil service system is that you cannot be suspended. You can't be docked in pay. You can't be demoted. You can't even be terminated except for just cause. But nobody knows what that means. So if you scour through the statutes, the only reference to it refers to the fact that if you don't show up to work for 5 consecutive days, then you can be terminated. So what Representative Steineke and I did is we went out and looked across the private sector to come up with a definition for what just cause is, a very tight definition. And I'll just go through a few of those. Harassment, physical violence, being intoxicated under the influence or possession of a controlled substance while on duty, theft of state property, conviction of a crime if it makes it impossible for the employee to perform their duties, falsifying business records, misuse or abuse of government property to include distributing pornographic material, and then a no-call, no-show for any 3 working days within a calendar year. And I'll tell you why it's important that we codify this in state statute. There was an instance of a state employee, and they wanted to check up on him. He was at work. They just weren't sure if he just wasn't getting enough work done, they thought. So they checked into his computer time, and they found that in a 2,000 hour year, where you work on average 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, he was viewing pornography 4.2 hours a day. They tried to get rid of them, but the Work Commission sent it back saying, no, you have to keep him because you didn't tell him ahead of time that this was behavior that was frowned upon. Which is why we decided we're going to come up with a tight definition of what just cause is. That would pass any smell test on the private sector. You ask anybody out there, they know that they can't show up to work drunk, that they can't physically harass employees, that they can't watch pornographic material on their computer. And we took those and put those into state law to make sure that stories like this don't happen again.
Yeah, it's incredibly important because I think this is probably the key piece for employees to have some certainty as far as where the bright lines are in their job, what they can do, what they can't do, and what is absolutely an immediate fireable offense. That the nebulousness of that just cause definition is really something that we thought was problematic for employees throughout the state workforce. So when we looked at it, as the senator said, we wanted to make sure it was tight. We wanted to make sure that it met that reasonable person standard where any of the things that are mentioned, people will go, yeah, well, of course, you don't want somebody like that working for the state and the taxpayers paying their salary. So we thought that was really important. And then when it comes to the appeals process, we just wanted to make sure that was streamlined to protect not only the employees but also to protect the taxpayers, because you have a process now where the process can take 1.5 years or more from point A to point Z to final termination of an employee. And while that employee is going through that process, often they're on paid administrative leave, not doing their job, not able to do their job, and the agency isn't able to hire somebody to do the job that they can't do. And so what that's doing is just costing taxpayers more money, possibly making overtime, like in Department of Corrections, an even bigger problem. So we set some very clear guidelines in there in the bill as far as how that appeals process works.
So I guess in closing, the reforms that Representative Steineke have been working on over the course of the last few months, these are plain and simple recruitment retention reforms. We want to enhance our civil service system. It was a great system created in 1905 out of very real problems. We want to enhance that and make sure that it is still working for our government, for our state employees in 2015.
First question, why get rid of the civil service test altogether? Why not still use it as a tool in hire?
It's totally irrelevant. What we find talking to the agency folks is that it doesn't do it, just like the example that I gave you, an accountant who turned out to be a short order cook.
That person would never get hired. I'm saying, why not use it in cases where they are qualified? Wouldn't it make more sense?
But at that level, again, it's totally irrelevant. So nothing in our reform prohibits a state agency from coming forth. Say they were trying to hire an accountant, and we go through the resume-based process. They certainly could, if they wanted to, take two applicants and say, we just want to test your competency in a particular field. Nothing prohibits them from doing that. But this is a process which is time-consuming for the applicant. Again, nobody does this anymore. I guess if you don't have a computer, you've got to show up at a testing center on a Saturday morning to take this. Again, it doesn't meet our end goal of drawing down that hiring process to under 60 days.
Yeah, it just further complicates the process, and like the senator said, has very little value anymore because people have learned how to game the test from what the agencies are saying by utilizing certain keywords. So it's something that the private sector does resume based. We have some protections in there in the hiring process to make sure that there isn't any cronyism, right?
Can you expand on gaming the test? What do you mean?
You can go in. So right now, if you're not supposed to put person identifiable information in there, but you could definitely write in there that I worked at X agency for so many years before transferring to this, before transferring to that, and put in code words. And talking to agency officials, there are what they would consider to be professional test takers who know how to say the things the right way to make sure that they fall to the top of the list. When in actuality, if you looked at experience, relevant work experience, that's absolutely not the case.
Is there anything in the proposal you're putting out that would specifically prevent some kind of political litmus test, or again, you mentioned cronyism? That's obviously what the Democrats are screaming about. So is there anything in here that's specifically meant to prevent that thing from happening?
Well, we currently have it. I mean, our system is guarded against that right now. We're not changing that at all. All we're doing is, on the resume side, we're just getting rid of an archaic exam and bringing with a more 21st century hiring reform, which is submit a resume.
How does the system guard against it now?
Well, I mean, the resume-based system currently, the way let's move towards the way that it's set up under the bill. The way that's set up under the bill, it's not just one person making the ultimate decision. The DPM would be tasked with being a clearinghouse for all these resumes, right? As agencies requested the resumes, that information would go out. The hiring process would be done in combination with DPM and the agency itself. So there'd be kind of a checks and balances between DPM and the agency.
It protects it, I think, more so even on the back end, where the way it was before, you know, a different administration came into government, they were able to purge the state employees that perhaps worked against them in a political campaign. You can't do that now, which is why we have those just cause provisions in there. If you're in a cubicle and you have a blue fist hanging up, a picture of that on your wall, you're not going to get fired. If you did or did not sign a recall petition, you're not going to lose your job. I think that's, again, a pinnacle of what the civil service system is, and we don't alter that at all in the reforms that we're bringing forward.
Or if you have a picture of Donald Trump up in the cubicle, you can't get fired either.
But what prevents somebody from not being hired for those reasons? I mean, could those things be working? How would we know if that worked against somebody in the initial hiring?
Yeah, I don't think that the current system is an ultimate protection against that either. I think that could still happen under the current system.
So just to be clear, what you're proposing is no longer taking a state test, a 60-day hiring process that involves 60 days of gathering or 30 days of gathering information, 30 days of the agency being able to hire, a 2-year standardized probation, and a 1-year firing and appeals process.
The appeals process the timeline that we're laying out, everything you said is correct, but the appeals process, that if you took it to its maximum, would probably be about 6 or 7 months. So we're taking it down from what we hear, a year and a half or 2 years, down to that 6 and 7 months, again, because they can't fill that position, which just causes the state taxpayers to have to pay more in overtime to get the same amount of work done.
Well, and if you do the math, you look at what Department of Administration has told us about those people that are working their way through the process. At any given time, there might be 50 to 100 of those employees. That's costing taxpayers real money. Those people are getting paid for sitting on the shelf, not doing their job while they're working their way through the process. And I think that would be something that's pretty frustrating to taxpayers. So we want to respect the rights of employees. We want to make sure that the process is fair and even-handed, but we also want to make sure that it doesn't take a year and a half or 2 years to get through.
So in that 6 to 7 months appeal process, can they post for that position, or can that position not be posted until that entire process is completed?
While it's under the appeal, they cannot fill that position.
Under the current system, people have voting rights, so if the state lays off some workers, somebody's been here a long time, they move into a different position, that person has their job. What happens with voting rights under the bill?
So we address it in part. I was surprised to learn, as many of you might be as well, if you leave state employment to run for political office, so you run for the state assembly, you serve 2 terms, maybe you lose your next re-election, so that's about a 4-year time frame. You have reinstatement privileges in state government. We're getting rid of that. We're changing the, right now for layoffs you have 3-year restoration. We're changing that to 3-year reinstatement. So layoffs are chaotic in talking with the agencies, because exactly to what you said, people bump backwards to the jobs that they previously held. So it's a chaotic process, mass confusion at the agencies. What we're changing it to is a permissive reinstatement, so that if you've been laid off, you go to the top of the list when it comes to hiring for a similar position. You get kind of a preferential treatment because you're already with the agency, but you already have that experience. So those are the 2 things that we're changing
But
with
you
that.
wouldn't be able to move someone else out of the job.
You could not move somebody else out of the job. That's correct.
One more question.
Do you know how many employees are now covered by civil service, and what the number would be under your changes?
Right now, about 30,000 state employees are covered under civil service. And under our changes, about 30,000 state employees will be covered under civil service. So again, we're not changing the civil service system. We're just making it easier to hire and attract good workers. We want to make sure we can reward those workers for the hard work that they do.
Can you just clarify which departments too? This is, I mean,
that are covered under civil
Right,
service.
are we talking DPI, UW?
Absolutely.
WEDC?
Not UW.
Yeah, that's right, I just want to be clear.
Yeah, we can get you a comprehensive list if you want. And, I'll just leave you with this. As somebody that has done hiring in the private sector, it's incredibly important. There's a huge demand for quality employees, and sometimes it can be really difficult to find. As you're going through that hiring process in the private sector, you want to post the job, you want to interview as quickly as you can, and you want to hire the best candidate as soon as you identify them. And that's just not happening in state government right now, and it's something we definitely need to change. Because going into the future, especially with all these retirements looming, great quality candidates aren't going to sit there waiting to hear an answer from state government for 3, 4, 6 months or more in order to find out if they secured a position. They'll get offers in the private sector far before we'll get back to them on an answer from the state perspective.
Where does your proposal go next? Future, and where do things go from here?
We're going to formally introduce the bill the beginning of next week, and then we'll run it through the normal legislative process. So,
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.